everyone. Welcome to the Acrobatic Arts Podcast. I'm Loren, and I will be interviewing some of the top leaders and innovators from the dance and acrobatic industry. If you are a teacher, performer, student, or a lifelong learner like myself, you are sure to find these episodes intriguing and full of inspiration. Acrobatic Arts is passionate about providing current and relevant information for everyone. So please, sit back and enjoy as we share our passion with you and the world. Today I'm joined by Jonathan and Chelsea Godfrey, dancers, educators, and the creative minds behind the Godfrey Method. If you've seen their videos on the Acrodance Resource Center, you already know they focus on real strength, body awareness, and technique that actually sticks. We're diving into how it all came to life and how you can bring it into your own teaching. Let's get started. Welcome to the podcast, Jonathan and Chelsea Godfrey.
Hi, how are you?
How's it going?
I'm great, and I'm so excited to have you on the show today. We're going to jump in and get started with the story of how the Godfrey Method came to life.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
So, John and I started the Godfrey Method, I guess, really 2019?
Yeah, 2019. Yeah.
2019. We started a small homeschool program where we were working with some kids a lot more individualized, more personally, where we could get a little bit more hands-on and really have a conversation of, oh, what are we feeling here? What can we do? How can we make adjustments in our training? Then even further beyond that, I don't know, John, if you want to talk a little bit about in 2020, how the shift happened there.
Yeah. So during our work with the homeschool dancers, we really started to write everything down.
Yeah.
Formulate our lesson plans, what worked, what didn't work. And it was a lot of, I guess, trial and error in that sense of well, while we're doing this exercise, what are you feeling? How can we increase this? Are you feeling like it's improving you? Do you feel like it's not? So we had a lot of conversation there. And then as 2020 came, and a lot of the world shut down there, we had to then shift our focus from that traditional in-person educating. And we took that and obviously moved it to virtual. So what we did was we took all of that information in, these lesson plans that we had written out and our, research that we had done prior. And we were able to then shift that into our Zoom teaching, making sure that that was still a beneficial portion for the dancers. Going from that in person to online, I'm sure was very difficult for the dancers. So we made sure that we kept it as consistent as we possibly could.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I would say, how we started to see a shift in okay, we have something here, maybe a little bit more than just teaching our own students, and we started seeing, okay, wait, we have something here, this is working.
Yeah.
And that's really where it started to become, I guess, born per se.
Yeah, we had to make sure that this worked both in person as well as virtually.
Yeah, 100%.
I can see that the pandemic played a key role. How did that time shape your approach?
During the pandemic, like I said, we really focused on that virtual, just like everybody else. We were kind of forced into that. So, we took the hand we were dealt and we rolled with it and made the best of it. But I would definitely say that how we created everything prior was very helpful. It gave us a good base and allowed us to then continue to build from that portion, as opposed to just kind of going in blind, which I felt like would have been really difficult to teach. So where we had the ability to be so hands-on in person prior to online during the pandemic, when we switched to Zoom, we had to figure out a way to make sure that the dancers still understood what they were doing, and really focused on body alignment, body strength during that time, to ensure that even though we couldn't physically adjust them, we made sure that they had the ability to understand or see themselves in what they were doing right or wrong in that sense.
Yeah. And I think a big part of it too was now we were only seeing them on this tiny screen. So we no longer had this across the floor concept. We had some kids on carpet. We had some kids on tile. We had some kids who did have maybe a bigger space, or some kids who did have Marley floor. Everybody had something a little bit different, and we had to learn to adjust to that. Our jumping, just to kind of touch on that really quick, kids couldn't do full on second jumps. So to us, it was okay, well, what are the steps that we're going to be learning and teaching them? and coaching them so that when we do get back into a big space where they can do that, so they're not losing the strength or the ability to be able to execute that. So it was definitely also just being very creative with how to make sure we were still working jump power and shaping. And we started to really get into this flow that, yes, I think that we started to understand when we were working more hands-on with the student. But once you get behind the screen, like we really had to be super creative and think even deeper about not only just things that would work, but things that also are going to keep them engaged in class.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that portion of not being able to be hands-on or, something like jumps, for instance, where they're unable to train those like physically or, the full out skill, building upon the necessary strength in those smaller muscles and those smaller areas was super helpful and kept them going so that when we got back in person, when we were allowed and when restrictions opened up for that, we made sure that they weren't far behind. They didn't lose a lot of, the skills that they had built up, but they were continuing at a nice growth rate.
Yeah.
And so what I'm hearing is that on Zoom, you created sort of a different approach or a different structure to keep the kids engaged and work on the things that they could in the space that they had. And then when you came back in person, how did you realize that this system not only worked in your own classes, but that you could support other teachers?
Yeah, I definitely noticed like online that in my private lessons with the dancers that I was seeing a major shift in them basically across the board. But not only that, I don't know if this kind of goes back to the second question a little bit, but it was also kind of like, okay, seeing them in their private lesson and then also being able to take what I was teaching and actually learning myself like in their private and like applying it into like a full classroom setting kind of concept. So when I was watching them and when we started to see them coming back, or really we started seeing them come back in private lessons first, like individually, we didn't have like full open classes.
We weren't allowed
we're on
in the
the
beginning.
East Coast here. So we actually didn't open back up till like very, very late in comparison to a lot of other areas in the country. So we were very, very, we just did very individualized for so long in comparison to I think of a lot of other studios and places and whatnot. And I started noticing it honestly immediately. Like when the kids came in, they just had such a better understanding of like their body and their awareness. And I do think that time was such a difficult and tragic time that I also felt there was such a stronger appreciation for dance and for in-person training and coaching. But what I think it taught the dancers, the parents, and us was that it is possible to do this online. It just takes the right mindset and the right kind of method and the ability to know how to communicate what you want your dancers to be doing in order to see a difference in their growth.
Yeah. So I think, when we came back and we started to see those dancers in the beginning individually and then coming back and seeing them in a group, that they really hadn't lost much. If anything, they had grown so much.
God, I swear to this day, those dancers that came back, they are turned into our strongest dancers. And I swear to this day, it is because we got so much individualized attention with them. We learned so much as teachers, I felt. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, John. We learned so much as teachers and as educators. And just, I really felt like it opened up a door that I didn't even know was there.
Honestly. Yeah. So, when we came back, we realized, I think at that point that we had something. So we had initially just started an Instagram account.
Yeah.
And posting to our Instagram account to just help other dancers and help other educators and take our practices and apply to themselves because we saw that it worked. And from there, that's when people started messaging us, wanting to bring us into their studios, into workshops and master classes. And then from there, it really continued to grow into what we are today.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I don't think there's anyone in the world, especially the dance world, that hasn't seen your Instagram or your TikTok, but your social is really captivating. So if there is someone out there that hasn't seen what you do and how you do it, how would you describe the Godfrey Method to someone?
Yeah. So I think the easiest way to describe it is we are strength and flexibility, as well as some technical, training as well, but strength and flexibility focused on the dancer. Strength training, I think, in dance is not a big thing. So we really focus on that strength training so that when we get into the practice of what we're working on, strength training for pirouettes, so then when we get into the execution of pirouettes, we have all of the necessary boxes checked off and tools, as opposed to just going over and over it again. So it's strength and flexibility training for dancers and educators.
Yeah, I consider us the how of the process, the how we're going to take these steps in order to get what we want to achieve. Right. So that's what I would tell someone. It's not just like John's saying, it's not just executing the pirouette. It's all of the steps and exercises, strength training tools that we're going to be taking in order to successfully be able to accomplish that, to avoid injury, to avoid building bad habits, and just building through that. So I would consider us even when we work with kids that are in in combine settings and stuff like that, I would say, guys, we're here today not to teach you a bunch of turn phrases because you're going to get that all day. Instead, we're here to teach you the tips and the tools to do that safely and strongly. That's how I would.
No, for sure. I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
You focus heavily on strength and body awareness, and at Acrobatic Arts, we are all about that. So we love your program. Why are those such big priorities for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it was when I was still dancing, professionally. I had gotten injured and I never stopped dancing, but it definitely took a toll on my body. So I did a lot of PT and rehab through like my process. And I think I took a lot of that with me into my teaching setting. And that helped influence kind of what helped form the Godfrey Method and what helped shape how I teach. But I always look at it like we are trying to make sure that the dancers have a long career longevity, as opposed to, becoming this absolutely amazing dancer right now, but 5 years from now, they have trouble with their knees or their ankles. So we're looking at that career longevity and how strength training can really support them for their longevity, but as well as just right now in strength and physicality.
Yeah. I even think like post dance, when they're ready to move forward, I also think that, or I don't want to use the word move forward, but move on, whatever their next chapter may be, that if they choose to teach and whatnot, that they can carry those tools and that knowledge into the next generation. I think that's something that we all learn as we grow as teachers and as educators, is we learn different things, from when we were taught dancing.
For sure, yeah.
And we've learned so much now. And I believe the information that we know now definitely supports a healthy dancer's body and should be continued to be taught and passed on.
Absolutely.
I know that a lot of traditional training is about repetition. How does your method shift that mindset?
I think that goes back to Chelsea's, verbiage on how. How do we get to this point, as opposed to, growing up, I feel like for myself, and I don't want to speak for Chelsea, but for myself, it was always like, all right, well, we're going to do splits until we get splits. Okay, well, how do I get a split, for instance, or how do I increase my pirouettes from X amount to X amount, as opposed to let's just do it over and over again. We're going to be focusing on, well, to get a better pirouette, you need a high passa, you need a high releve, you need to bring your back around. Let's break down those specific elements with targeted exercises.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that repetition, I believe in repetition.
It definitely helps.
I definitely believe in repetition. I just think repetition has to be done safely. So I'm not opposed to people doing, something like codified or something that it's just how you're doing it, like, which I know is like our theme, but I think it's the, like, how we're doing it. And if it's really putting wear and tear on our body, or if it's promoting healthy development and it's going to increase the possibility of results. And I think there are so many different ways that we can get to the results that we're seeking. Maybe you don't do like 12 sets of splits like in the same class, but you do like 2 sets. And then the next week or whatever, you do, maybe 2 or 3 sets, like just working on not overdoing it, I guess, but still have repetition, because I do believe it.
Yeah, repetition is definitely important. It just can't be the sole and only way that you're trying to improve on something. There has to be backing with it.
For sure.
Now I'm curious, you were both dancers, and then you started your studio, and then you worked online, and then you came back to the studio. What are some things that you've learned about teaching in both settings?
I've learned a lot. I've learned so much. I will say that teaching online is, obviously a lot more challenging, but I think is so important when you're online. We have definitely worked out a system for ourselves online because there are two of us, even though there's not always two of us, but we have a system set up. Like if we're online, let's say we're coaching a team or a studio or just someone online or people that, that maybe we don't know as well or and whatnot, we definitely have worked out a system where we're able to watch them while the other one is teaching, or if we're doing both, we have an assistant there to execute so we can come back to the screen and watch. That way we're making sure that we're giving that feedback to the kids, like, so they're getting the most out of it when we're online.
Yeah, I mean, I think another big thing is when you are online, the focus on explanation
Yeah.
is so important. You have to make sure that you're explaining everything to a T,
Yeah.
which, in all honesty, then transfers into that in-person teaching, making you a better teacher.
Yeah.
And I
I
always
couldn't
said
have
this
said
when
that
I
better. That was great.
first started teaching, the ability to see made me a better dancer. I started teaching, I was able to see the dancers, so I'd give them a correction on, say, their hips, their rotation, their, rib cage, whatever the case may be. And then you're like thinking about it, like, oh, I could also apply this to myself. So I think teaching online has improved my in-person teaching because of the explanation process.
Yeah, ditto.
And I know for myself, without hands-on corrections, it changes things. So what tools or techniques do you use to help the dancers connect to their own movement?
Analogies. Definitely analogies, making it something that maybe makes more sense to them. I talk about, for instance, when you're engaging the core. I know a common analogy for that is just belly button to spine, but in reality, belly button to spine just kind of limits the amount of oxygen flowing through the body. It contracts the lungs a little bit. So I always talk about bringing the core engagement from your back and knitting together in the front. It weaves together from the back and comes to the front. And that allows for a stronger engaged core, but also the ability to have normal breath without having to engage it too much. And I think when we also released one of our products, our blocks, we focused on how that is going to help in the classroom. So our blocks
Yeah,
are labeled.
that was a big thing, actually. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, John,
No,
but that was like a big thing that we thought about when, after we had our first set of blocks released. And then after that, we kind of looked at each other and we're like, wait, we need to be able to think about how we're going to do this
better,
online.
better, and online.
And online. And the easiest thing was, okay, well, let's put words on it. So when we're coaching or teaching whatever online, that people are understanding what we're saying without us having to take so much time to explain the prop usage or the blocks or the bands or anything like that, because that stuff takes away from class. And even in person, I see
Keeps the flow going in class much better.
flow, and you don't realize until you have I would say, a strong or successful class flow, like how important it is to your work and to your dancers to continue moving through that. So I do think that that was like a major shift for us.
Yeah. So like our blocks specifically are standard size yoga blocks, but they're labeled with backside and tail so that when we're in class, both virtually or in person, we could just say to the dancers, please lay the block on its back and place your hands on top. And it makes that class flow go quicker as opposed to then having all the hands go up and be like, well, which one's the back?
Yeah.
Or how do we explain this? Especially if there's not an assistant or somebody to demonstrate, that helps the flow. And we've thought about that process of in class flow for the educators as we developed all of our physical products, our bands, our blocks, and everything like that.
It became what is going to be efficient. It's all about efficiency and effectiveness, of course.
For sure. And those blocks play a huge visual aid, even in something like a la seconde turns.
Yeah.
Having one dancer hold it while the other dancer finds that point of 90 degrees and then bringing the leg back down, that block kind of solidifies, okay, this is where I'm going to go, but also this is where I'm going to stop so that the leg isn't too low or too high.
Acrobatic Arts uses the yoga blocks as well. And I went to your store online and I saw your blocks and I thought, isn't that wonderful to have words written on? Do you have any other visual cues or props that you think have proven most helpful when you're guiding dancers?
I mean, I think the Alice Cone one is like a great one that John had mentioned. I also think using props like in partner scenarios opens up the door for dancers to be and to build awareness, like body awareness, because they are now, responsible for holding the block, in a certain position so that their fellow peer can be placed properly. So they have to stay, activated and engaged, and then when it's their turn and it switches, they're then more aware of where their body needs to be. So I do feel like, that's a great example of how using blocks, it maybe honestly not even in a way that, I don't want to say not in a way that they're intended to, because I think I think it's a great
Unlimited uses.
yeah, unlimited uses. But, I think when a lot of people think of blocks, they think of like flexibility or, right? Would you agree
Yeah,
with
no,
that?
I agree.
I mean, we use them for stabilization a lot.
Absolutely.
But I think that that's a great example of also just showing how these tools can be used for a visual aid for in a partner scenario, and how it opens this door of I am learning as I'm executing it. I'm learning as I'm watching and now responsible for helping you.
And even, Chelsea, you do this a lot with more beginner dancers, is taking two mini loop bands and placing them on one handed, one foot. So we know that that leg
Yes.
and that arm are supposed to be the forward, right? So that
Yes.
left foot is forward and that right arm is forward. So that when they're going across the floor, just prepping, they're like, okay, this one forward. And it just helps kind of, again, solidify like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. And if they see their arm and it doesn't have the band, okay, I'm using the wrong arm or I'm
Yeah.
using the wrong foot.
Again, like unconventional ways, I think, to use the products. But again, just goes to show that there's just so many ways that you can get creative with your teaching, using tools that you will find success from. And, it just is like
Exploration. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Now, I've heard that you have an intensive coming up in August, I believe. Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, sure. So we are so excited to be hosting this intensive, which will be at Montclair State University, which is a beautiful, absolutely beautiful
Yeah. Beautiful new
campus.
studios.
Beautiful studios. We're hosting it on August 16th and 17th. And it is going to be a opportunity for kids to come in. It's a technique focused intensive, but of course we do have other classes like contemporary as well, jazz, but there's a lot of other things, like things that you don't necessarily see in like a convention setting, like progressions across the floor or a turns class, like, and again, the how to turn, right? So all the fundamental building and the strength that comes with that flexibility. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about, the other people that we have as well.
Yeah. So like Chelsea had mentioned, a weekend full of just technique training, technique refinement. So Chelsea and I are obviously on that panel. We're excited to have like Kelby Brown coming in, teaching a great ballet class. And, he's going to be focusing on that ballet technique. It's not going to be a combo. It's a ballet class. It's a technical class. Sophia Lucia is coming in, and, I know she's really kind of popular right now with her turns breakdown. And, she's a great turner, and she's going to break down how she turns and how to improve those turns. Megan Sannett's coming in, bringing us some great jazz. So we have a really great star-studded lineup. We're also going to be offering a injury prevention and recovery class. So for us, it's not just about let's get a bunch of combos that dancers can post on their social media to help boost our follower count or, for the next, it's all about like these smaller, more intricate things that are going to actually help them become better.
That's not to take away from other events that do like have like combos, because there's nothing wrong with that. I think that this is just a different kind of a space. Like this is just a space where we're kind of building to be able for the dancer to release in their artistry more, and to really explore that where they feel confident about what they're doing in their body because they're more aware of it. And I really think that that's what we, as the Godfrey Method does, is we build body awareness and for the dancers so that they can do things that maybe feel a little bit more like risky in certain spaces, like falling off their center of gravity more, and knowing that when they're hit the floor, that they're not going to break their kneecap. Like, I know that sounds silly, but things like that is just, you don't realize how important this part of the process is until you've done it.
For sure. Yeah. Hoping that, they come to this intensive, they grow, they learn, and then they take those skills into, say, other conventions, because this is just a weekend for us. We're not putting on a tour. This is a weekend of growth to help them build through not just the season, but their future seasons as well.
Absolutely.
And is this intensive something that we can look forward to every year?
We're hoping.
I hope so.
We're hoping to grow it in the future as well.
Yeah, my dream would definitely be to be able to host a week-long event with a performance at the end of, that would be something to talk about. I don't know.
Yeah.
And like, room and board, and just, they would room at the university, and just really giving them that summer camp experience would definitely be a dream of mine that someday, maybe will happen. If I know anything about me and John, it's if we can dream it, then it's possible. So definitely something I would love to see. But right now I'm just like so excited for
this first
event. And I am very eager to meet a bunch of dancers from all over. I feel very grateful. Lots of gratitude.
Well, we definitely congratulate you for putting on an event like this, and we wish you the best, and hopefully it will get bigger. Speaking of things getting bigger, you're also launching a teacher resource center. What kind of support will this provide for dance educators?
Yeah, so our teacher resource center is going to be housed inside of our app, inside of our Godfrey Method on-demand platform, and it's going to be just helping educators grow and continued education for them. So if you are a member of our app already and you're a teacher, when this does release, so it's a sneak peek for everybody, there's not going to be any additional charge for anybody who's already on the app. The educators will just have to fill out a quick little, application, just so we could verify that they're a dance educator or an acro educator. And it's going to house videos about class itself. Yeah. Stuff like class flow, lesson plan building. We're doing a partnership with Dr. Stacy Barber, and she's going to be talking about injury prevention, recovery, ways that teachers can take that knowledge and bring it into the class. So it's all going to be about enhancing the classroom experience and enhancing their teaching knowledge and making their dancers better on the outside of just general strength training, general repetition, general flexibility training. We're hoping to really give them a full rounded experience within our app
for dancers for teachers, and dancers, but a hub for teachers to really be able to come and kind of get as much information as they possibly can, so that they as teachers can have a less stressful experience and a proven
absolutely we're gonna have written out lesson plans in that teacher resource center as well for some of our classes, because that's been something that's been requested.
We've been doing lesson plan writing forever. So if you're a teacher that's listening, I would highly encourage that, because you use those and you going back to them is honestly so amazing. Like sometimes when I'm doing my own classes, I need to go back to my class lesson plans from September. By June, you're burnt out.
I was going to say, not every day is a great day, and your brain is not going to be at full functioning power every single day. So having that ability to go back and just look and be like, okay, I've done this class on, say, second leaps, for instance, I'm going to take this knowledge and apply it. And it kind of just gives you a boost.
Yeah.
And you feel more prepared. And for me and Chelsea, I think just feeling prepared is a big thing. If you go into class unsure of what you're going to do,
I can't,
your brain gets scattered. So going in with that game plan that we talked about earlier, as well as some written help, even if you're just like, all right, the first half of the class, I'm going to focus on X. The second half of the class, I'm going to focus on X. It keeps you moving. So kind of like a curriculum, but we take it more class by class step.
Yeah.
Jonathan and Chelsea, I know that you're very busy and your time is tight. Would you be able to come back for a part 2?
Yeah, we would
absolutely.
That'd
be great.
Fantastic. Everyone, stay tuned, because we're going to have them on and continue our talk about the Godfrey Method.
See you then.
That's a wrap on today's episode, but we're not done yet. Jonathan and Chelsea will be back soon to continue unpacking the Godfrey Method and all the brilliant thinking behind it. If you found today's chat informative, make sure to follow the show, leave a review, and share it with your fellow dance educators. Remember, great teaching isn't just about what you know, it's about how you bring it to life. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a great day.